Now, we're going to start with our first question. And Ikwa built these questions around what she felt like the issues were. The first issue is what caused the separation of people of African descent. She has on here imperialism, the myth, Africans selling their own, a fight against imperialists, warfare among the tribes, kidnapped by force, greed. So who wants to address that question first? Dr. Babs, you're smiling. I know you got it.
Yes. Very good question. And first of all, let me say that we have to go back to history. There are facts and there are myths. Let's set aside the facts from the myth. Yes, Africans were sold into slavery, and there are so many reasons and so many facts about that. First of all, as Africans, we are very hospitable, and we welcome strangers into our midst and accept them as one of us. And some of them took advantage of that situation. Secondly, African likes to train their children, and so they assign them to what you call apprentice, so that they can be trained and get the best training possible. And some of these people that were entrusted into the hands of the children took advantage of that as well. Of course, there's also a fact that there were wars, and when prisoners were captured, they were sold and traded like commodities. So these are all different facts. However, it saddens me when I hear the fact that Africans sold their brothers and sisters into slavery without redefining exactly, explaining the circumstances. I always say that my African brothers here and sisters are also part of us. And we have to begin to break away from this myth, from this mindset, that because of this that happened in the past, we are divided indefinitely. I don't think that should be true, because definitely we need to learn from that, and we need to move forward because we're one people, we're one blood. And so by uniting together, we can do common good than dividing ourselves. A house divided against itself will not stand. And so I come from that point of view.
Would anybody else like to address the separation? Go ahead.
There's no doubt that we have a painful history. But in today's terms, why there's still a divide between the communities? Well, I can speak from personal experiences that for the Africans, the first comers, when they first arrive in the United States, sometimes they have, I would say, unpleasant experiences. And when that happens, some Africans tend to basically regroup, and they isolate themselves, and they choose to only socialize with other African people, which is a mistake, because in every nation, you'll find good people and bad people. You find people who are educated and people who are not educated. And it's a matter of giving it a chance, giving it a try, and learning the language, obviously, communicating with people, sharing experiences, and learning from each other. The way I look at the diaspora is that we have to embrace that difference. We're all different. As Africans, we look at black people and we have a wide array of shades, a wide array of languages, a wide array of experiences. And that diversity is our wealth. So the key to helping reduce that divide is to increase communication between different groups, basically, different black groups. And the same goes also for African American. I know a lot of African American have some bad experiences with Africans in different ways. Whether it's when you go to the braiding salon and the customer service is not really up to par as it should be. We all have our issues, and we have things we have to work on. And as an African person, I'm not afraid, or I'm not scared to look at myself and understand and realize what are some of my flaws, whether it is the tone of my voice, the facial expression. Those are cultural nuances that, sometimes can bring a challenge in communication, because communication is very, very, complex. I know that, as an African man, the way I communicate from my cultural background may not always be fit in every context. So, but we learn to understand that by communicating more and more across communities with African Americans, sharing our experiences with them and getting to understand them. And it's about getting to know each other and bringing our differences to the table, sharing our experiences and getting to know each other better. And that's why this platform, I think, is excellent, because at least it puts everybody at the same level. And we speak our mind, we share our opinion, and whether we have a negative view or a positive view, we have to respect either side, and we have to come into a common ground and hopefully to help the people who have a negative view maybe come to the positive side.
You know, this continent called Africa has been demonized. It's been demonized for hundreds of years. And we don't understand that it is done for political reasons. It is in people's political agenda to do it on purpose. And the reason they do it is because they know that if we were to unite the African peoples of the world, what we could create out of that would be powerful beyond measure. The Renaissance of Africa is happening now as we speak. We have a very young population in Africa, a very energetic, a population that is increasingly educated. When I speak a lot to African Americans, and I have to say I was here in school, I was one of those people you talked about. I was here, I came in 1979 and I left in 1986 or 7. And in those days, everybody from Africa was being told, go back to Africa, go and help develop the continent. And yes, there was a bigger contrast than there is today. And the changes that have happened in Africa, I tell you, you really have to come and see it for yourself. For whatever reason, when I look at the media, the same Africa I used to see on CNN when it formed in 1980, whatever it was, is the same imagery that I see today. The wars on the continent, the difficulties, the Samburus, they like to show, those tribal cultures. They never talk about the fact that, for instance, in my country, in Kenya, we are leading in mobile phone technology. We are bringing Google, Microsoft, all these IBMs, all these companies are coming into Kenya now to build up infrastructures in that part of the world. There is so much energy, so much so many new ideas being developed on the continent. And I feel that of all the people in the world who should be coming to help us, who should be coming because it's a part of your soul, a part of your being, it should be the Black American culture or the African. I never get this right. I apologize. I never quite know whether to
We
call
don't know what it is either. It's okay.
But I feel it should be the Africans around the world, coming and saying, just like the Irish here in America have helped to develop Ireland, then it should be the Africans from all over the world coming to help us on this journey that is going to transform Africa, which is already in the throes of that transformation.
Very good. So I want you two, Reverend Harris and Elder Siah, to talk about what happened during the separation concerning religion, the gods, the deities, whether there was one or many gods, or the introduction of the gospel. What happened there?
Thank you very much. African people, by large, they have always been religious people. Now, missionaries left from Europe and even North America with good intentions to carry the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, when they went to parts of Africa to carry the gospel of Jesus Christ, they did not carry the gospel of Jesus Christ. They carried their version, the American version and Eurocentric version of the gospel, not in its pure form. So when they get to Africa, they try to impose Eurocentric and American culture on the African people instead of teaching them the true gospel. Now, some of them have some interaction with the indigenous people from the surface and not in the everyday life to know what they do as far as religion. They only see on the surface, and based on what they see on the surface, they draw conclusions that are not true. And what they draw on the surface and publish as facts always is not true. So an example, Africans are always religious. They are not only just people religious in the secular sense, but it's a way of life. So an example, to an African to have once a week service, and you do all you can on the Sunday, you dress up, you go to church, and you sing the songs, and you go back to the culture Monday through Saturday and do all the things, and then come back to be that. No, for the Africans, it's a way of life. The songs that we sang, the instruments we use, those are used to do different ceremonials, religious as well as in the secular sense. So when they see a quote-unquote juju man that uses the drum for juju purposes, they construe that anybody that plays a drum, the drums are demonic. Even though Psalm 151 says, let everything that have breath praise the Lord. So these are the kind of things that have really divided us, and we are the new people got to start understanding our culture and teach the true gospel, and not a European version. So an example, for the Western, the female, due to the traditional setting, has to wear a bra. Now, the breast is not a sex symbol. In the African culture, the breast is for feeding a child. As a result, a woman or a mom can feed her child anywhere without having to worry about, don't do that here. So when a European goes there, they say, no, is that right? I don't know how to put it, but so because the husband is getting uptight from seeing the women with that, so they want to ban you from being who you are and also inhibit a child from living by the breast. So these are the kind of things that we try to do. And in other words, what I'm saying, talking about how we got here and our history, our past, we now that have become educated, we see the light, we're going to be determined to speak the truth. Those things we see on TV that are not right, you only see on TV, the news media, anything on Africans that's negative, nothing positive, as she was saying. Why not? Why not talk about some of the accomplishments instead of only putting Africa on the news where you got some bad things? So we got to create our new media to tell our story. Yeah, like the civil rights movement, they couldn't depend on other people to tell their story. They have to have their own media to tell their story. Thank you.
Well, I've been here. December will make me 45 years in this country. I came here when I was 21 years old, and I'm still 21. I landed, I did my undergrad at Temple University in Philadelphia. During that time, 1968, a lot of Africans came to this country, especially from South Africa, those that were fighting for independence. When I landed there was a serious problem for the fact that they have already told our people here, the African American, that we sold them. This caused a lot of conflict. You see, when a missionary, when they go to Africa, they have already made up their mind that the continent is dark. Dark simply means that we are not lighting, we don't know anything. So their coming will enlighten us. They already made up their mind. So there's nothing you would do will change it. First, they will attack our languages. They will attack our way of dressing. They will attack the way we cook our meal. Now, the God who created us, he gave us all of these things. Now, are you challenging God that God made a mistake to have made me a black person? When God created us, what did he say? He said, I create you, man, in my own image. And he said that he was satisfied. You felt good about it. Now you will come and tell us that the way we look is very bad. The father of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, he said when the European came, they told them to kneel down and pray. When they closed their eyes and they started praying, their land were gone. Their land were gone. So, this does not mean that there's not good European Christian. There were some that meant very well. But to come and decide that we are not worshiping the right God and to refer to our way of worshiping as animates, so which means we are worshiping animals. And secondly, we believe in our ancestors, that God is so powerful, we cannot talk to God directly. So when our ancestors die, they go and intercede on our behalf. Then they decide to write about us that we are ancestor worshippers. So all of these things have caused a lot of confusion. So when our brethren, especially during the Harlem Renaissance, in the 60s, they started rediscovering Africa. If you do not write your own history, the person who writes your history will write it from their perspective. So as my pastor said, this is the reason why we need to tell our own story, to dispel the myth so that we can be on equal footing.
All right, thank you. So let's talk about for a moment what happened after the separation, the fight for independence, for your own way, or you just talking about to worship whatever God, or the God that you were born to worship, and marriage and your way of life. And then how did fear play a part in the separation, after the separation? Dr. Babs?
Religion hello, can you hear me? Religion is a very dangerous topic. And because you can see what is happening in Nigeria right now, where those 300 plus children were adopted. And you could see the personality being displayed on the TV, talking about how they're going to be sold. Now, if you look at that as a religion, you're wrong. That is nothing but devil, evil. Let's call it spade a spade. There are extremists in all religion, whether it's Christianity or Muslim or whatever it is. But when you see evil, you must call it evil. And in this case, that is the case. Well, you will also, I'd like to address the issue of religion in Africa, because it's the biggest problem we've ever had, and it's still happening today. Many countries have the same problem. You have the North against the East, the Muslims against the Christian, and sometimes there's no tolerance among each other. So it's a problem, but there is always an answer, and that answer is love. Because love, just like light and darkness, love will always open doors to compromise, to discussions, to communications, to open mind. But when you are so fixed on your own ideas that only your way is right, then there cannot be any compromise, and you begin to address extremism. And that is one of the problems that we have. Yes, Africa originally have their own way of worship and their own way of religion. And I don't want anyone to undermine the significance of that, because it's very powerful. And they also believe in their own God. And the same God that we all worship, we just worship them in different ways. Right. Now, for someone to label them as bad, definitely is to undermine what you have. And see, that's always been happening in terms of the perceptions of Africans. I used to remember when I flew to Nigeria all the time in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And the only people that I will find in the planes are white folks. And when I get to the United States, they start talking about Tarzan. And so they give you an image that there's nothing there to find. That's the creative divide, because they don't want you there. But they go there to find their treasures, okay? And say, oh, it's not a good place. These people are this, these people are that. We got to change that. And that's why I like this kind of forum that is creating an explosion already, because it's uniting us together, because we're one. And anyone who tells you that Africa, number one, is the cradle of civilization, that is where all knowledge started. We are university before Europe did. Nigeria was the 4th country in the world to have television. So we're not that backward. And we have technologies like here. We have buildings just like here. We don't live on trees. I used to think that when I came here early in the 70s, students used to ask me, where is your tail? And I said, I left it in New York. Just, arouse their curiosity. And then we opened the discussion that, look, you got to, think beyond that. Don't believe everything the media tells you, because they have a mission, okay? Thank you.
I'll just add on to what Professor Onabanjo has said, because it rings so true for me that the biggest fear comes from a lack of knowledge of what our individual stories, of what particular stories are. We're not, as the poet Sitawa says, Africa is not a land of guiltless natives. We've done our fair share of harmful deeds. We've done our fair share of selling, buying, doing all the terrible things that resulted in, or that facilitated the slave trade. But having said that, moving on from that, and especially today, there are so many stories. But it's hard when we think of ourselves as, even the word Africa for me has a problem, because when you think about Africa, you're talking about what, 52 countries. And when I was in Nigeria in Ake last year in November, and I could tell you it is more different for me to be there than to be here. Because here, not only have I lived here before, but also the media is full of American situation comedies. It's full of American stories. I've watched American movies. So coming to America doesn't feel that strange. I know many stories about people who've experienced life in America. It's not the same. Even within Africa, we face some of the same problems. We need to have the same sort of dialogues, because the communication is not the way that you think it is. Certainly on Kenyan television, apart from, Nigerian movies, they've made a big hit in Kenya, eh? Yeah, we all walk around going, tu, tu, tu. Nonsense. which is fantastic, because I see it as well here. But I have to say, the other side of the coin that I've seen is that there's, at least when I was here, not only, yes, did people ask about where's your tail and all that, but also there was this thing about exoticizing Africa in a very Eurocentric way. So people would ask, what about, are you related to Prince who or King who or whatever? And I try and tell them, look, my parts of the world where I'm coming from, we had councils of elders. We did not have kingdoms. We did not have kings, queens, all that. I actually can't even relate to it. We were Democrats long before America was democratic, yeah? So it's also beginning to understand that there are nuances, there are individual stories, and those stories need to be told. So one of the things, partly because, of course, I'm a publisher and a writer, is please buy African books, African stories. They are powerful stories that can begin to open eyes, just in the way that our eyes in Africa have been opened to the rest of the world, because by force of our education, we are forced to read the rest of the world. It's part and parcel of our curriculum. So here, one of the things that I would like to see a lot more within the education system, especially within places like Atlanta that have a big representation of Black Americans or African Americans, there should be a lot more African literature available, a lot more African stories available. And then we'll start to see real understanding, because from stories, we understand the nuances, not just the big, broad brush that CNN comes in, or I don't know why today CNN is top of my mind, evildoers, of spreading, all this stuff about Africa that is so negative, yeah? I'll stop there.
All right.
I just wanted to add 2 quick points about what you just said, and it's very true. I think that it all starts with the fact that we have to love ourselves first. I think that in the black community, I'm not even going to say African or African American, I'm stopping the divide there, just in the terminology. We have to love ourselves first, and we have to understand that in the mainstream media, black or dark skin is not a synonym of beautiful. To be beautiful, you have to be either, you know, light skin or white or fair. That's their definition, and it's whatever. But what I wanted to say about that is that we have to know that as a black people, we have to empower ourselves. Nobody else will. And the issue of the divide doesn't only exist here in America or in the islands. We have the same issue in Africa. In Africa, for example, we have been colonized. And in Africa, the main languages are, unfortunately, well, fortunately, unfortunately, depends on how you look at it, because it's unifying. Now it's helping us, because all Africans, you can communicate with all Africans if you speak English and French, both languages. I speak both, so I'm able to speak with any African, whether, you know, from Kenya, from Zaire, from South Africa, wherever. That's a good thing. But within African nations, if you speak your own native language, some people will look at you and say, why aren't you speaking French? Or why aren't you speaking English? And I say, well, that's my native language. I have the right to speak it wherever and whenever. And so we have that shame. We have to get rid of that. We have to get rid of the shame to be black, or embarrassed to be African, or embarrassed of our culture, of our identity. If you think about it, even having a nappy hair is a source of mockery. People make fun of you. Oh, you have nappy hair? Well, yes. And then, we've never heard somebody make fun of a Caucasian saying, well, your hair is whatever it is. Your hair is straight. And that's funny. Yeah, why? So we have to stop believing in the hype or whatever someone else tells us. And that is destructive within the black community. When you wake up in the morning and you feel good in your skin, you know where you come from, you know your identity. And also, we have to stop this nonsense. Some Africans say, well, black Americans, well, they don't have a culture. What is that supposed to mean? They do have a culture. You know, it may not be your culture, but it is a culture. They have an identity. They are people. They have mind. They have an intelligence. So we're all human beings. We all have the same, the same God-given gifts, you know, and the way you were brought up by your parents define you as a person, your intelligence, your kindness, your heart, and the content of your character. That's what defines you as a person. So if someone has maybe more resources in terms of cultural identity, they speak several languages, okay, great for them, but that doesn't make them better than you. That doesn't mean that just because a person knows Africa more or is African rooted doesn't mean that they're better. No, it just means that they have something that you don't have. But you also may have something that they don't have. So it's about sharing, and it's about coming together and understanding, oh, well, you bring something different to the table, I bring something different to the table, and we have something that we can share. I can bring you some of what you need, and you can give me some of what I need, because I'm African, and I've been here 18 years. There's a reason why I'm here. So I can't, you know, we should not talk down about America, or because America has been built by black American. Let's remember that. So that's where I stop.
This young man has a lot to say, and it just segues right into the next topic is, you know, what happened, the results of the separation, the mistrust, the distrust of each other, the lack of support, the economics, the different colors. We're all still struggling with shades of black. We still struggle with that, whether we're black African, black American, whatever we are. Drugs, crime, lack of dynamics. Certainly